The problem that Apple has, and it's a bit bizarre in some ways, the problem they have is they've got this sort of two slotted products. You know, the iPhone, which sits down at sort of a low end of the marketplace in terms of the overall size, and then the iPad, which sits up at a sort of a higher form factor size, and then really nothing in between. And so as a result, they're getting picked away at by, Samsung and others with slightly larger phones, and with Amazon and Google with slightly smaller tablets. And so there's this great black hole in the middle that Apple really needed to get a product into because they were being picked away at by various competitors. So as a result, we're seeing a smaller iPad, and it's still my expectation that we'll eventually see an even larger iPhone. But for now, what we get is a smaller iPad. So this is really not a revolutionary thing at all. It's really a sort of an inevitable brand extension they had to do.
Yeah, inevitable brand extension maybe, but so close together. I don't even remember a time that Apple launched two products pretty much back to back. I mean, it's only 6 weeks.
Yeah, but if you go back to sort of thinking about Apple as a computer maker, I mean, it wasn't very uncommon for them to say, for example, launch, a new MacBook product and then an iMac product shortly thereafter. So a little bit of separation between them, but not that much. So, historically on the computing side, they would do things very much like this. So it's not entirely surprising that they would do it on the mobile side. So, this was something that was coming. It couldn't happen at the exact same time as the iPhone because it needed its own attention. And, and the only surprise is that, it's in a sense that it's taken them this long to realize that they needed to have products between the smaller iPhone and the larger iPad.
And Steve Jobs called those tweeners. He famously said in a 2010 earnings call, of course, 7-inch tablets are tweeners, too big to compete with the smartphone, too small to compete with the iPad. These are among the reasons that the current crop of 7-inch tablets are DOA. We know what that means, dead on arrival. So are they dead on arrival?
Jobs was famous for saying that about any product that Apple hadn't shipped yet. It was DOA largely because it wasn't from Apple. So I look at this in much the same way, that what Steve was really saying was we haven't shipped one, everything else is junk to Apple's way of thinking. So once we ship one, everything will be changed. So I think he was at least open to the idea, or at least some of the anecdotal evidence we have towards the end of his life was that he was taking the idea pretty seriously even by then, and obviously he must have been. So I think this was more about posturing as they thought about where they wanted to slot this in. As I said, it was absolutely inevitable that they had to have a product here. They couldn't leave the market wide open from the standpoint of some of the smaller form factor devices like from Google and Amazon and others. And so there's going to be a product here. The question is, where are the sales going to come from? Are they going to come out of Google and Amazon, or are they going to come out of iPad sales? And I think it's more likely, at least initially, a lot of the sales come out of out of iPad sales. And that's a bit of a risk for Amazon or for Apple's margins.
So who are they targeting here? Are they targeting kids?
I don't think they're targeting kids. I think they're targeting people who think that using an iPad is a little bit like doing, bicep curls. I mean, it's just, the thing is lovely to look at, but you're doing this all the time. You're lifting it up and down. It's just inconvenient in many ways. If, let's say, for example, you're cruising around and commuting and you want to read books and do other things, it is just too big and heavy, and that's been one of the criticisms of the device all along. So I think that's the primary market, and then secondary markets are anyone who wanted to pay less and get much of the same functionality. So that turns it into a game-playing device and brings in kids and some of those other groups.
And of course, Microsoft's launch of Surface is a few days after the Mini. Should we read anything into the timing of that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Apple's been pretty conscious all along that they need to sort of make sure that Microsoft is marginalized and stays marginalized in this marketplace that Apple really helped to drive. And so there's no question that the two are tied together. But again, this has more to do with Apple having to get this product to market than it does to do with any real fear that Microsoft is going to make some kind of grand entry into the marketplace and take back anything more than a vanishingly small share of tablets.
And do you think that this is a little bit of Tim Cook also coming into his own?
I don't know. I mean, I wish if Tim Cook was coming into his own, he would do it in a much more exciting way. And we were talking about Apple TVs, not slightly smaller iPads. So, yes, this does seem very Tim Cook-like in that it's an incremental extension. But on the other hand, it isn't particularly exciting. And, I'm more concerned about its impact on margins than I am about it opening up a brand new market for Apple.